The human never thought his life would change in a single day. For years he lived a simple life, working hard, paying bills, and trying to make sense of the endless routine. Then came the letter, delivered not by mail but by a courier who refused to speak and only bowed before leaving. The letter carried a seal that glowed faintly as if it was alive, and when he touched it, the surface seemed to hum with energy. Curiosity took over fear. He broke the seal and read the words inside. They were strange, written in an old script, but somehow his eyes understood them. The message was short. His inheritance was ready. He frowned because as far as he knew, he had no family left, no relatives who could leave him anything. Yet, the words pulled him forward, and attached at the bottom was an address that did not belong to any city he knew. He thought it was a mistake, maybe even a trick, but something inside urged him to go. That night he barely slept, tossing and turning as the words burned into his mind. When dawn arrived, he packed a small bag and left. The location took him far outside the busy towns, across quiet fields and old roads. Finally, he arrived at a hidden valley, covered in mist and shadows. There, carved into the rock, stood a doorway taller than any building he had ever seen. Symbols glowed faintly on the stone surface, shifting like living things. He reached out to touch one, and the stone trembled. The doorway opened, releasing a deep sound like the heartbeat of the earth. His chest tightened as he stepped inside. The tunnel led him into a massive underground chamber. The air was heavy, filled with the scent of metal and something ancient, like the smell of storms before rain. Light poured from crystals that floated in the air, illuminating piles of treasures beyond imagination. Gold, silver, and strange gems shimmered in the glow, but what froze him in place was not the treasure. She stood at the center, waiting. A girl, no older than him, yet her presence filled the chamber with power. Her skin carried faint patterns, glowing like starlight, and her eyes burned with a beauty that seemed not of this world. She wore armor shaped with elegance, crafted from gold and obsidian, fitting her like it was alive. And behind her swayed a striped tail, moving slowly with the grace of a predator. He could not speak at first, stunned by her beauty and the surreal sight. She studied him with calm eyes, as if measuring his worth. Then she stepped forward, her voice soft but strong. She called him by name, though he had never told her. His body froze again, the shock running deeper this time. "You have come," she said. "The inheritance is yours, the fortune of my people, the last treasure of an empire that ended long before your world was born." She raised her hand, pointing at the mountains of wealth behind her. "And with it, you inherit me." His heart pounded, louder than the echo of her words. He tried to laugh, to believe this was a dream, but every detail felt too sharp, too alive. Her presence, the shining treasure, the cold air around him, all of it was real. She walked closer, her golden armor shining under the crystal lights. "This is not a choice," she whispered. "It is destiny. You were chosen before you were born." The human struggled to breathe. Questions filled his mind. Why him? Who had chosen him? And why was this beautiful alien girl claiming to be part of his inheritance? But before he could speak, the ground beneath them shook, a low rumble warning that something else was awakening deep inside the cavern. The rumble grew stronger, echoing through the cavern walls. Dust fell from the ceiling and the glowing crystals flickered like candles caught in the wind. The human stumbled back, fear rushing into his veins. The alien girl, however, did not move. Her eyes remained steady, focused on the shadows deeper in the chamber. Something stirred in the darkness. He could hear it before he could see it. Slow, heavy movements, like chains dragging across stone. Then the air thickened, carrying a low growl that did not belong to any animal he had ever known. His throat tightened. He wanted to run, but the doorway behind him had already sealed itself with stone. There was no way out. The girl turned her head slightly, her voice calm despite the tremors shaking the ground. "Do not fear. This is the guardian. It wakes whenever the inheritance is claimed." He swallowed hard, trying to control his breathing. Guardian? His voice cracked, and he hated the sound of his own weakness. From the darkness, a massive figure emerged. It looked like a creature forged from both machine and beast, with eyes that glowed red and armor fused into its skin. Each step it took shook the ground, and the pile of treasure rattled as if afraid. Its growl rolled through the air, shaking his bones. The human froze, but the girl finally moved. With a slow, graceful step, she placed herself between him and the monster. The movement seemed deliberate, protective. She raised her hand, and strange golden lines lit up across her armor, spreading like veins of fire. The Guardian halted, its eyes locked on her. The silence that followed was unbearable. Every second felt stretched, heavy with tension. Then the girl spoke again, her voice sharper this time. "He is chosen. Stand down." The beast tilted its head, and for a moment the human thought it might obey, but then it released a roar so loud it shook the chamber. The sound pierced his ears and sent a sharp pain through his skull. The creature lunged forward. The human shouted without thinking, his instincts screaming for survival. But before he could even move, the girl reacted. She leapt into the air, her tail flicking like a whip, and golden energy burst from her hands. The blast struck the Guardian's chest, throwing sparks into the air. The monster staggered but did not fall. The fight had begun. The human could only watch, heart pounding as the girl faced the giant creature. She moved with incredible speed, her body glowing with power. She struck again and again, each blow sending bursts of light across the cavern. The Guardian countered with its own brutal strength, its claws tearing through the treasure and shattering piles of gold like sand. The noise was deafening, clashing metal, echoing roars, and the crack of energy. Exploding against stone, the human felt helpless, trapped in a battle too large for him to understand. But as he watched, something inside him stirred. A voice, soft but clear, whispered in his mind. "Do not stand idle. You are part of this destiny." He gasped, spinning around, but there was no one there. The voice was not outside. It was inside him. His chest burned, and he clutched it with trembling hands. When he looked down, he saw faint golden lines glowing under his skin, the same pattern that had appeared on the girl's armor. The girl glanced at him for the first time during the battle, her eyes wide with recognition. "It has begun," she shouted. "Your power is awakening." He stumbled back, his body shaking as the glow spread across his arms. He didn't understand what was happening. The treasure around him blurred. The Guardian's roars faded for a moment, and all he could hear was the rush of his own heartbeat. The girl shouted again, but this time her voice was filled with urgency. "Choose. Fight with me, or all of this will be lost." The human's hands trembled as golden light pulsed under his skin. The warmth spread through his chest, filling his lungs and racing into his arms. He had never felt power before, not like this. It was terrifying and yet strangely natural, as if it had always been sleeping inside him, waiting for this exact moment. The Guardian roared again, swinging one massive arm at the girl. She dodged with a leap, but the strike smashed into the stone floor, sending cracks racing outward. Rocks split and treasures rolled, scattering across the ground. The cavern shuddered as if it would collapse. She called out to him, her voice firm despite the chaos. "Focus. Let it flow through you. The inheritance is not only treasure, it is blood and bond. You are tied to this place as I am." Her words made little sense to him, but the urgency in her tone left no room for doubt. He clenched his fists, closing his eyes for a brief second. The glow inside him pulsed in rhythm with his heartbeat. When he opened his eyes again, the Guardian was rushing toward them, its metal claws gleaming with deadly sharpness. Something inside him snapped. He raised his arm without thinking, and a burst of golden energy shot out, colliding with the Guardian's chest. The impact shook the chamber. The beast staggered backward, roaring in pain, smoke rising from its armor where the energy had struck. He stared at his own hand, his chest rising and falling in shock. He had done that. He didn't know how, but the power answered him. The girl's lips curved into the faintest smile. "You are awakening faster than I expected." But the Guardian was far from finished. It shook off the smoke and let out another roar, this one even louder. The sound reverberated through his bones, making him stumble. Then the monster charged again, faster this time, its red eyes burning with rage. The girl leapt forward, meeting it head-on. She struck with her glowing fists, each movement sharp and precise. Sparks flew, golden light against metal fury. The human watched in awe, but he knew he couldn't stand still any longer. His chest burned hotter, urging him to act. He ran forward, his steps clumsy at first, but the energy inside him steadied his movements. When the guardian swung again, he raised both arms and released another blast. This time, the energy formed into a barrier, a shimmering wall of golden light. The guardian's claws slammed into it, but the barrier held. The force nearly knocked him down, but he gritted his teeth and pushed harder. The glow around him brightened until the barrier exploded, outward, sending the guardian stumbling back once more. The girl landed beside him, her breathing quick but steady. She glanced at him with something more than approval. It was recognition, as if she had been waiting for this moment. "You are not ordinary," she said softly. "You carry the mark of the chosen. That is why the inheritance called you here." He wanted to demand answers, to ask who had chosen him and why, but the guardian roared again, interrupting. Its body sparked with red energy now, its fury rising. The battle was not ending. It was only beginning. The girl tightened her fists, her golden glow flaring brighter. "Together," she said, locking eyes with him. He nodded, fear still in his heart, but courage growing stronger. They both turned toward the beast as it charged again, the ground shaking under its weight. This time he didn't feel like a helpless bystander. This time, he felt like destiny had dragged him into a war that was older than his world, and he was ready to fight it. The guardian thundered forward, its claws glowing with molten red energy. The sound of its steps echoed like drums of war. The human braced himself, his body shaking but his spirit refusing to bend. The girl moved beside him, her golden aura expanding as if to shield them both. When the beast swung down, they reacted together. She darted left. He raised his hand, and their powers collided in a single strike. Her golden arc of energy clashed with his sudden burst of light, forming a wave that slammed into the guardian's chest. The impact threw the creature back against the cavern wall. Rocks shattered, treasures scattered, and the sound rumbled, like thunder rolling through the deep earth. For a brief moment, silence filled the chamber. The human's chest heaved as he tried to catch his breath. Sweat dripped down his forehead, yet the glow under his skin pulsed brighter than ever. He felt alive in a way he had never known before. But his body also trembled, not used to such power. The girl turned to him, her expression calm but her eyes sharp. "You see now? This power is yours. It was always meant for you." He shook his head, his voice weak. "Why me? I'm no warrior. I was just—" "You were chosen," she interrupted firmly. "Long before you were born, your bloodline was marked. The inheritance could not rest forever. It needed a guardian, someone to carry it forward." Before he could respond, a roar split the silence. The guardian rose again. Its armor smoked, its body damaged, but its rage only grew. Cracks of red lightning spread across its metal skin, glowing brighter with each step. The creature was adapting, its fury pushing it beyond pain. The girl's jaw tightened. "It will not stop. Not until one of us falls." The human swallowed hard. His legs shook, but he forced himself to stand taller. He thought of his old life. The endless routine, the days of emptiness, the sense that something was missing. Now, standing here, facing a monster with a girl not of his world, he finally understood. That life was gone. His destiny was no longer ordinary. The guardian charged again. This time the human did not hesitate. He ran forward beside the girl. Together they struck, their lights colliding in a blast so bright it blinded him for a second. The roar of the guardian turned into a scream as the golden energy pierced through its chest. The beast staggered, its movements slowing. The red light in its eyes flickered. With one final strike, the girl leapt high and slammed her glowing fist into its head. The explosion shook the cavern, and the creature collapsed, its body crumbling into shards of metal and ash. The ground stilled. The cavern grew quiet again. The only sound was his heavy breathing mixed with the girl's steady rhythm. The guardian was no more. He stared at the remains, disbelief flooding him. We did it? She nodded slowly, but her voice carried a weight. The first trial is over, but do not think it is the last. The inheritance comes with burdens, as great as its treasures. Her eyes softened as she looked at him. For the first time her voice lowered. And now, you must accept the truth. The fortune is yours, but so am I. By ancient vow, the chosen does not only inherit wealth. He inherits the bond of a bride. His breath caught. The words struck deeper than the battle itself. He stared at her, trying to understand if she was serious. But her calm eyes told him she was not joking. Destiny, it seemed, had given him more than he ever imagined, and far more than he was ready for. The cavern was silent now. The guardian's broken remains scattered across the floor like shards of a nightmare. The human stood still, his chest still heaving from the fight, his eyes fixed on the girl. Her words echoed in his mind, refusing to leave. A bride. He had inherited a bride. He tried to speak, but his voice failed. At last he managed a whisper. Why? Why would I inherit you? She stepped closer, her golden aura fading until only the faint glow of the cavern crystals lit her face. Her beauty was sharper in the quiet light, and her eyes held both strength and sadness. Because it is written, my people once ruled the stars. When the empire fell, they sealed away their last fortune and their last heir. They swore that one day when the chosen arrived, the heir would bind to him. That heir is me. He shook his head in disbelief. You mean, you've been waiting? For me? Not only for you, she replied softly, for the bloodline you carry. Generations have passed and many never reached this place, but the bond waited. Now it is complete. He stepped back, his thoughts spinning. A fortune he could barely understand, power that frightened him, and now a bride from another world. It was too much, too sudden. I don't even know your name. Her lips curved faintly, though her eyes stayed serious. You may call me Saris, that is the name given to me before the fall of my people. The sound of her name felt like a key turning in his chest. Saris. It carried weight, history, and something unshakable. He stared at her, unsure if he should feel honored or trapped. Before he could ask more, the cavern shifted again. The walls glowed faintly, revealing new symbols that had been hidden until now. The ground trembled lightly, not with danger, but with awakening. From the floor, a path of light spread outward, leading deeper into the darkness of the cavern. Saris looked at the glowing trail and then back at him. The treasure is not only gold and jewels. What you saw is only the surface. The true inheritance lies ahead, but it will not reveal itself unless you walk with me. He hesitated. His instincts screamed to turn back, to run from this madness. Yet when he looked at her, something steadied inside him. He had already fought a monster. He had already touched a power he never believed existed. Turning back was no longer an option. He gave a small nod, and Sarah stepped forward, leading him down the glowing path. The air grew colder and the crystals dimmed, replaced by strange lights pulsing from the walls like veins carrying energy. The tunnel stretched far, the silence broken only by their footsteps. Finally, they entered a second chamber. This one was even larger, its ceiling lost in shadows. At the center stood a throne, carved from black stone and wrapped in golden chains. Around it rose statues of warriors, alien in shape, yet noble in design. Each one seemed alive, their stone eyes watching him. Sarah stopped at the edge of the chamber. Her voice dropped low. This is the Hall of the Vows. Here, the bond between us must be sealed. Only then will the rest of the inheritance awaken. His mouth went dry. Bond? She turned her gaze toward him, unwavering. A union. Your acceptance ties our fates together. If you reject it, the inheritance will fade and all that was fought for will be lost. He looked at the throne, at the silent statues, at the endless shadows watching from above. His heart raced. The weight of choice pressed down heavier than any battle, and in that moment he realized the fight with the Guardian had only been the beginning. The true trial was standing before him now. The human stood frozen at the edge of the hall. The ID throne seemed alive, its golden chains pulsing like veins, every statue's gaze pressed down on him, silent witnesses to a choice that could not be undone. His heart pounded so hard it echoed in his ears. Sarah stepped closer, her armor glinting faintly in the dim light. She looked calm, but he could sense something beneath her stillness, an unspoken urgency. This is where the vow must be sealed, she said. Without it, the legacy of my people will vanish forever. He swallowed, his throat dry. And if I refuse? Her eyes flickered with sadness, though her voice stayed steady. Then the fortune will collapse into dust, and I will fade with it. My existence is bound to this bond. Without you, there is nothing left. The weight of her words struck him like a blade. He had never asked for this. He had lived a life of ordinary struggles, never dreaming of riches or alien brides. And now he was being asked to choose not only for himself but for the survival of someone who had already fought by his side. He looked at Saris again. She stood tall, her gaze unwavering, but her fingers trembled slightly at her sides. For all her strength, she was not without fear. She had waited a lifetime in this place, bound by duty, carrying the burden of her people's last hope. The human stepped forward slowly, every muscle in his body tense. I don't even know if I can do this, he admitted. I don't know if I can carry what you're asking me to carry. You already have, she replied softly. You faced the Guardian. You awakened the light inside you. That is proof enough. The choice is not about worth. It is about courage. He let her words sink in. Courage. That was all that had pushed him this far. Not knowledge, not power, not destiny, just the refusal to run when the world demanded he stand. The path of light pulsed brighter, urging him forward. The throne seemed to breathe, waiting for him to claim it. Slowly, he placed one foot onto the glowing path. The statue's eyes flared faintly, as if acknowledging his step. When he reached the base of the throne, Saris joined him. She raised her hand, and a golden flame appeared between her palms. It shimmered like a living star, humming with ancient power. This flame is the vow, she explained. When we share it, our bond will be sealed. The fortune will awaken, and our destinies will join as one. The human stared at the flame, its light reflecting in his wide eyes. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. His breath grew shallow, but he did not turn away. Saris extended the flame toward him. Do you accept? The chamber grew silent, the air heavy with expectation. He could feel the pull of the inheritance pressing against his chest, demanding an answer. Every instinct screamed at him to run, but something deeper anchored his feet in place. Slowly, he raised his hand. His fingers trembled as they hovered above the flame. Saris's gaze never left his face, and in her eyes he saw no trickery, no deceit, only truth. He took a deep breath and let his hand sink into the golden fire. It burned, but not with pain. It was warmth, like the first sunlight after endless winter. The flame split in two, half flowing into him, half into Saris. Light consumed the chamber. The chains around the throne shattered, falling like broken stars. The statues bowed their heads as the hall trembled, not in destruction but in awakening. When the glow faded, he found himself standing beside Saris, their hands still joined by the last threads of golden fire. She looked at him with quiet certainty. It is done, she whispered, and in that moment he knew there was no turning back. The Hall of Vows still glowed faintly, But the silence felt different now. It was no longer the silence of waiting. It was the silence after something irreversible. The human's chest rose and fell as he stared at his glowing hand. The flame had faded, but the warmth remained deep inside him, steady and alive. Cirrus lowered her hand, her golden eyes fixed on him. The bond is sealed. From this moment, you are not only heir to the fortune, you are heir to the promise of my people. He opened his mouth to speak, but the chamber shuddered violently before he could say a word. The statues around them cracked, their stone faces breaking as echoes rolled through the cavern. The path of light they had walked dimmed, as though the vow had woken something else. Cirrus's expression tightened. They know. The human's pulse quickened. Who knows? Before she could answer, the walls themselves trembled and split. Beyond the cracks, he could see shapes moving, dark figures with glowing red eyes. They stepped through the stone as if it were smoke. Their bodies were armored, their forms tall and sharp, like shadows given solid flesh. Each one carried a weapon shaped from black fire. Cirrus's voice was sharp now, filled with urgency. The hunters. They were bound to the vow, waiting for the chosen to awaken. They are sworn to destroy whoever claims the inheritance. The human's throat tightened as the hunters filled the hall circling them. Their movements were slow but deliberate, like predators enjoying the fear of their prey. He gritted his teeth, his skin glowing faintly with golden light again. So this was a trap? Not a trap, Cirrus corrected quickly. A test. The guardians protect the fortune, but the hunters destroy the unworthy. Only those who can survive them may carry the legacy forward. The lead hunter stepped forward, its red blade humming with power. Its voice echoed like broken glass. You are not worthy. You are flesh, weak and fleeting. The fortune belongs to none. The human clenched his fists. His fear clawed at him, but the flame inside refused to let him back away. He glanced at Cirrus, and she gave a small nod. Together they stepped forward. The hunters attacked without warning. Black fire slashed through the air, cutting across the glowing hall. The human raised his arms, and a golden shield burst into existence, catching the strike. Sparks exploded, filling the air with light and smoke. Cirrus moved like lightning, her golden fists striking with precision. She crushed one hunter's chest, sending it shattering into fragments of shadow. Another lunged at her, but the human reacted this time, blasting it aside with a burst of energy that flared from his chest. But for every hunter that fell, more came through the cracks. The hall became a battlefield of gold and red, their powers clashing like storms. The human's strength surged, but each attack drained him faster. Sweat poured down his face, his arms heavy, but the fire in his veins refused to die. At one point, a hunter nearly reached him, its blade aimed at his throat. Cirrus intercepted with a furious strike, sparks raining across them both. She glanced at him, her voice cutting through the chaos. Do not hesitate. They feed on weakness. Trust the bond. Trust me. He nodded, forcing his body to push harder. Together they fought side by side, their lights weaving together like one. Golden arcs collided with red fire, shaking the hall to its roots. And yet, as the battle raged, the human could feel something darker stirring beyond the hunters. A presence heavier, older, waiting for its turn to rise. This trial was not the end. It was only clearing the path for something far worse. The battle in the hall raged like a storm. Golden light clashed with red fire, shaking the very ground beneath their feet. Hunters fell one after another, their shadows burning away into smoke, but more poured in through the cracks. The human's breath grew ragged, his body heavy, yet the fire inside him refused to go out. Cirrus fought like a storm given form. Her fists shone with golden arcs, her tail flicking sharply with each strike, her movements fast and precise. She stood like a shield beside him, never letting the hunters close without feeling her fury. Still, the weight of endless enemies pressed against them both. Then suddenly, the hunters froze. Their red eyes flickered and they stepped back into the shadows. The silence that followed was thick, unnatural. The human's chest rose and fell in harsh rhythm, his golden glow dimming as exhaustion dragged at him. "Why did they stop?" he asked, his voice low. Saris's expression darkened. She did not answer at once. Her eyes turned toward the throne, now free of its chains. The shadows around it twisted and deepened like a wound spreading across the stone. From that wound something began to rise. The ground split, and a figure emerged, taller than the hunters, cloaked in black armor that pulsed with crimson veins of energy. Its face was hidden behind a mask carved with jagged symbols, but its presence alone filled the hall with suffocating weight. The air itself grew heavy, pressing down on the human's chest until he struggled to breathe. Saris stepped forward, her voice sharp. "The warden?" The human forced out a question through clenched teeth. What is it?" She kept her eyes locked on the towering figure. The final judge of the vow. Stronger than the guardian, stronger than the hunters. It rises only when the bond is complete. It will test us not as individuals but as one. The warden's voice rumbled through the chamber like an earthquake. "The vow has been sealed, but strength is unproven. You are flesh, you are fleeting. You do not deserve the legacy." The human's fear tightened around him, but Saris turned and met his eyes. Her voice was steady even as her aura flared bright. "Together we can face it, do not doubt. If you falter, we both fall." He nodded weakly, though his heart hammered in his chest. His body felt drained, but the bond's fire still glowed, faintly inside him, urging him to stand tall. The warden raised its hand and the ground cracked as a massive blade of shadow formed. It swung and the force of it ripped through the air like a storm. The human threw up a shield instinctively, golden light sparking as the strike crashed into it. His arms burned with the effort, nearly breaking under the pressure. Saris leapt forward, slamming her fist into the warden's chest. The impact echoed, but the giant barely moved. It turned its masked face toward her and swung again, forcing her back with sheer strength. The human stumbled but found his footing, his fire pulsing brighter in response to hers. He rushed forward, blasting golden light at the warden's legs. The giant staggered for only a moment, then roared, shaking the chamber so violently that dust and stone rained from above. The battle had begun, and already the human understood. This was unlike anything before. The guardian was a beast, the hunters were many, but the warden was something else. It was judgment itself, a force born to break those who dared to claim what was not rightfully theirs. As the echoes of its roar filled the hall, he felt Saris's hand brush his shoulder, steadying him. Her voice was fierce, unyielding. "We stand as one. Remember that. Your light, my strength. They are the same now." He tightened his fists, the fire burning hotter inside him. Fear still gnawed at his bones, but for the first time, he did not feel alone. And as the warden advanced, each heavy step shaking the throne room, he realized this fight would decide not just his fate, but hers, and the future of everything the inheritance promised. The warden moved with terrifying weight, every step cracking the stone beneath its feet. Its blade of shadow hummed, radiating red light that made the air burn. The human and Saris stood together, golden sparks flickering between them as if the bond itself was alive. The warden struck first. Its blade crashed down like a falling mountain. The human raised his arms, golden light bursting into a shield. The impact rattled his bones, nearly throwing him to the ground. His knees buckled, but Saris was there. She pressed her hand to his shoulder, pouring her strength into him, and the shield held. "Stand!" she commanded, her voice fierce. "You are not alone." The human gritted his teeth, forcing himself to push back. With a shout, he sent the shield exploding outward, the golden blast throwing the warden a step backward. Saris darted forward in that instant, her body glowing as she struck the giant's chest with both fists. Sparks burst like fireworks, but the warden barely flinched. It swung its blade sideways, catching Saris and sending her crashing against the stone floor. The human's heart stopped. He ran to her, fear gripping him, but she rose again, battered but unbroken. Her eyes burned with golden fire as she stood. "This is not just strength," she said, her voice strained. "This is unity. You and I must fight as one." He nodded, his fear hardening into resolve. They moved together, golden light weaving between them. Each time she struck, he followed with a burst of energy, their powers combining in blinding arcs. For a moment the warden staggered, forced onto its knees, but then it roared, the sound shaking the hall like thunder. Red cracks tore across its armor, pulsing with darker energy. The warden rose taller, stronger, its blade growing into a massive weapon of pure crimson fire. The human gasped as the heat washed over him, nearly melting the air itself. His legs trembled, his arms weak, but the fire inside him blazed hotter, refusing to let him fall. Saris moved closer, pressing her back against his. He felt her strength flow into him, and for the first time, he realized the bond was not only about sharing power, it was about sharing soul. The warden charged again. Together they met it. Golden light erupted from both of them, swirling into a single beam that cut through the air. The warden swung its blade, colliding with the beam. The impact tore through the hall, shaking the statues, cracking the throne, and filling the chamber with blinding light. The human screamed, pouring every last drop of strength into the bond. His body shook, his vision blurred, but Saris's voice cut through the chaos. "Hold. Do not let go." Their powers clashed with the warden's fury, gold against red, light against shadow. The chamber itself seemed ready to collapse under the force. The human felt as if he would break apart, but then he saw Saris's face, calm, fierce, unwavering. Her faith anchored him, and his fire roared brighter. With one final cry, they pushed together. The golden beam surged forward, overwhelming the crimson blade. The warden staggered, cracks spreading across its armor. It released a roar that shook the hall one last time before the golden light consumed it. The explosion was deafening. The warden shattered into a storm of fragments that dissolved into smoke. The chamber fell silent, broken only by the heavy sound of their breathing. The human collapsed to his knees, his body drained, sweat soaking his face. Saris knelt beside him, her hand steadying his shoulder. Her golden glow dimmed slowly, flickering, like the last light of a dying star. "It is done," she whispered. "The bond has proven itself. We have passed the trial." The human raised his head weakly, staring at the now quiet throne. The golden path pulsed again, brighter than before. The inheritance was waiting, but deep inside he knew trials always came with a price, and the final truth had yet to be revealed. The chamber lay in silence after the warden's fall. The golden path glowed brighter, stretching from the shattered throne deeper into the darkness. The human struggled to his feet, his legs weak, his chest still burning with the memory of power. Saris stood at his side, steady and unyielding, though her glow had dimmed. Together they followed the light. Step by step the chamber shifted, the cracked stones smoothed, the broken statues reformed, and the air filled with a hum like 1,000 voices singing at once. The throne itself rose higher, golden chains gone, transformed into a seat of light. When they reached it, the path vanished beneath their feet, and the throne pulsed as though alive. From its heart rose a sphere of golden fire, brighter than anything they had seen before. The warmth of it wrapped around them, not harsh but comforting, like sunlight breaking through endless night. Saris lowered her head respectfully. "The legacy of my people," she whispered. "The last breath of an empire. It is now yours." The human stared at the sphere, his heart pounding. "I don't understand. Why me? I'm not a king, not a warrior. I was nothing before this." Saris turned toward him, her eyes softer now. "You were chosen not for what you were, but for what you could become. Strength is not in bloodlines or crowns. It is in courage. And you proved yours." The sphere floated closer, hovering between them. It split into 2 streams of golden light, one sinking into his chest, the other into hers. The human gasped as warmth flooded through his body, filling every vein, every heartbeat. His vision cleared, sharper than ever. He felt stronger, not only in body, but in spirit. Ceres's glow flared again, her presence radiant. The bond between them pulsed, no longer just fire, it was life itself. She looked at him with a quiet smile. We are no longer two, we are one. This is the vow completed. As the last threads of light settled, the chamber shifted once more. The piles of treasure melted away, flowing into the ground, leaving behind only the glowing throne and the two of them standing together. The inheritance was not gold or jewels, it was power, unity, and a bond that tied them across worlds. The human stood tall now, no longer trembling. He turned to Ceres, his voice steady for the first time. So this is what I've inherited. Not just fortune, not just a bride, but a destiny. She nodded, her golden eyes meeting his. And it is not the end. The empire that fell once may rise again. With you, with us, its future can be written anew. He breathed deeply, the weight of it settling into his heart. The ordinary man he once was gone. What remained was someone forged in fire and trial, bound to a warrior who had waited lifetimes for this moment. The cavern's light dimmed at last, sealing away its secrets. Only the bond remained, glowing faintly between their joined hands. And, as they walked together into the new world beyond the cavern, the human understood one truth. His life would never again be ordinary. He carried the fortune of an alien empire, the strength of a bond forged in fire, and by his side, a bride whose beauty and courage were as eternal as the stars. This was not the end of his story. It was the beginning.